For joining. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first event of the App Makers Tour Europe. So throughout 2021, the App Association will hit the virtual road on this App Maker Tour because we want to bring together local app developers, industry leaders, policymakers, to have this open conversation about today's app ecosystem. So this is particularly important in a context where legislators in Europe, but also around the world, as a matter of fact, are discussing those new laws targeting global online platforms and including app stores. And in Europe, this is taking the form of the newly proposed legislation by the European Commission called the Digital Markets Act. And so we're extremely excited to kick it off with Romania. And this choice is not without reason, because Romania has been one of the countries over the past years where local startup ecosystem has really continued to grow. Most recently, Romania has seen some of the first unicorns. Cluj is one of the countries, city in the country referred by some as Europe's Silicon Valley. And recently, in 2020, according to reports, there's been quite a 6% increase in investment involving the tech startup community. So, to come back on the DMA, Digital Markets Act, the text is will aim to ensure the growth of this digital sector and bring more contestability and fairness to the digital single market. And it will establish a new set of obligations on large online platforms acting as gatekeepers, such as app stores. But in the app ecosystem, we know that it's extremely an interdependent ecosystem. And although app developers are unlikely to be captured in the scope of the proposal directly, the new obligations foreseen in the text will have far-reaching consequences on all the business models of those that do business with them, including small app developers and tech SMEs. And so, to talk about all of this today and to bring some of the on-the-ground experience and the perspective of our members in this debate, I'm pleased to welcome for this policy discussion. So first of all, Vlad, so responsible for competition and state aid, platform economy attaché at the permanent representation of Romania to the EU, will be at the heart of the negotiation on the Digital Markets Act within the Council. We also have Cezara, Panait, Head of Digital Policy for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Platforms at Europuls, a Romanian think tank. You recently published a study on Digital Markets Act and what it means for also Romania's tech scene. We also joined by app developers, Gabriel, Dombri, CEO of Tapptitude, app development agency based in Romania. Also has offices in UK, Amsterdam, and the United States, and you've been developing apps since 2013 in a wide range of sectors. And then we have Sveatoslav, Vizitiu, sorry for the pronunciation of the name, CEO and founder of Wello, health app to have parents and children know about the nutrition and healthy habits, and this through augmented intelligence powered solutions. So, first of all, welcome to all of you. And before diving into the proposal, I might just kick off with some of the developers there on a general question. Maybe Gabriel, I'll start with you. You're leading a successful app development agency at the moment. So you're building apps every day. So you have quite a lot of insight of the state of the app economy in Romania. So what is one of your biggest challenges today as a developer and as an entrepreneur in Europe, and also in Romania in particular? So what do you want to see, for example, from the European Commission or the authorities to do more to help you and your business to grow?
So I will start with the last part of the question. I don't know what I would like from the European Commission, because I don't know like what they've done before for like companies like ours, and I don't know what's possible for them to do. So I think this is like a gap of knowledge that we have, and I think we have. And when I say we, is like entrepreneurs like myself. I think I don't think we have full awareness of what is possible from that side. Now, what are the challenges for companies like ours? I think, first of all, they are very different than like what Wello does or like Sveatoslav does, because we are on the app economy side from the services kind of angle. We are working a lot with founders and with people who want to build businesses around apps, and we are like the teams behind them. Okay, for us, if we're talking about like the challenges right now in Romania, the challenges are to get good people and to manage to hire good people. I would say fast enough and with like good economics. So I think this is the main challenge that we have, because right now we are in a moment, especially after this year, in a moment where the need in the market for services has increased dramatically. I mean, we are so busy. We've been so busy for the last more than nine months, and we can't keep up with that. So from that perspective, this is what we need. On a kind of a bigger scale, because we work so much with startups, with founders, I think the money side, the funding side has tremendous impact in this market. But at the European level, I think, again, in the last 2 years, there has been tremendous advances in the funding, on the funding side. A lot of American VCs, for instance, dug quite deep into the European market. If you saw, I mean, UiPath, which is the first like Romanian unicorn, has been one of the strongest stories, the great stories of the European market itself. You know, from that perspective, you know, if you look at the returns from such companies, they tell a very important lesson for the bigger VCs, which before, especially the American VCs, which before haven't really looked at this market because it was so atomized, you know, so many like smaller markets, not really interesting, very difficult for the startups here to actually grow into really big companies, you know. So this is what I would see like the areas of impact for a small agency like we are, or a small studio like we are.
So indeed, you mentioned the importance of virtual venture capital. So what about you, Sveatoslav? What would you need to see as incentive in Europe to create more European digital players?
Yes, like said Gabriel, we are like different sides of development. We also started, like Gabriel, with some application to develop to Marriott, FedEx, and so on. But after we started to implement our internal projects like Wello and Ecstasy, and we have like 2 startups. One startup was helped by EU funds, and on our startup it's helped by VC funds now. And the most, I think, what we need for the EU startup, the Wello, that we are helping the families with overweight children, the most transparency about like innovation, because we need data, and when we need data, it's closed data, and every country has different data. For example, about obesity or overweight, each country have different levels, each country have different type of foods and so on, and you can access this information because it's closed, it's GDPR and so on. About another startup, Ecstasy, I think, like said Gabriel, like we already 2 rounds of VCs, and they already are saying that the next level will be to outside of Romania, not inside of Romania. It's like we have a gap, limitation here in Romania, because if you want to receive more, you need to go outside. And yeah, and when you're creating a Romanian startup, it's not, you need like to create a UK startup, but the same idea, but in UK company and so on, because it's not so looking well like Romania has the startups. Okay, we are blessed that we have a path now, and it's more easy, but hope which can change this one. But from my side is for research, it's very important to have one place where we can connect and to take some information, anonymous information, but this information help us a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on, to growing up and to be more more speed up our development and our growing up.
Yeah, you mentioned the need to access to data, and interestingly, I will actually invite you also to look at that. And at the other station, we'll answer there's this new initiative to create European health data spaces that's ongoing. So this is something that definitely to look into. So maybe thank you for setting the scene here. I think we're hearing a lot about investment and the need to create a place where Romania and Europe is attractive for different players. So maybe I'll turn to you, Vlad, for talk a bit more about the Digital Markets Act. So that's exactly one of the underlying objective of the European Commission when drafting this proposal is to create incentives for growth for digital players and create digital champions. And we've seen that Romania has one of the most thriving scene in Europe when it comes to app development and innovation. But when we look at the text today, are we really going to deliver on the different objectives, or are we creating this incentive to grow? So what would be the position of Romania on a general note, I would say, on the DMA as it stands at the moment?
Great. Hello, everybody, and thank you very much, first of all, for setting up this very timely event. It's a real pleasure to be engaging with Romanian parties in this very, how should I put it, useful dialogue, because I really liked the housekeeping setup that you've arranged before the event and that you've placed the app developers as being first in this dialogue. So us as regulators, we need first to really understand what the market has to say in this regard, to look at the lessons learned in the past, which in this case have mostly been in antitrust cases, and then try and deliver the optimal framework for them to have the right incentives, and then to benefit of a level playing field that afterwards will foster innovation. So this is highly appreciated on our side. I'll try to frame my intervention being based on your question, but also by addressing what my panel colleagues have previously mentioned. So to go to what Gabriel said at the very beginning, where we come from, I just want to point out that from the part of Romania, as a representative of the Council, we have previously contributed to passing another very important digital file that was during the Romanian Council presidency 2019. That was the platform to business regulation. So this piece of regulation was the first one worldwide to address matters of ranking parameters, access to data, self-preferencing by large platforms, or parity clauses. So here we pretty much opened up the scene with a general framework that is applied universally to all online intermediary services or search engines, independent of their market power. So right now, 2 years after, we're pretty much looking at the market and seeing that, okay, so we had this first layer of regulation, but the digital markets for the moment are not, let's say, very uniform markets. You have a couple of big companies which have, let's say, more market power in this regard. And basically, we've seen that the transparency standard that came up in the platform to business regulation was not enough. So basically, transparency followed up by antitrust enforcement maybe proved to be inefficient a couple of times. And now we're following up with a new framework. We're following up as co-legislators, but we're based on the Commission's proposal with a new regulation that looks only at companies which are being placed in this gatekeeper criteria. So these are undertakings with paramount importance for the market where they operate. They have a lot of power, financial power, data power, bargaining power. So this all transforms itself in let's say, an imbalancement between the contractual relationships, for example, between business users and the platforms. So here's where we're at right now in this moment with the regulatory approach. I mean, the proposal has reached us in January, so it's still early days of the discussions. But what I can say is that we're contributing and supporting the Portuguese presidency and achieving as much work as possible in terms of the negotiations, and we're looking to deliver afterwards, at the same pace. So, okay, this would be some general remarks. Now, in terms of actually pointing out, and now I'd move to what Sveatoslav said in terms of what are the needs of app developers and how do we relate to this. If there be for me to single out a couple of obligations that are right now codified by the Commission in its proposal, I'd say that there's a couple of them which are, let's say, more relevant for the app community. So these are mostly linked to online distribution channels, device neutrality, data access and data portability, or platform neutrality. And there's also another obligation which relates to the fact that digital gatekeepers need to inform about their envisaged acquisitions. So in terms of distributing channels, there's a provision relating to anti-steering. In terms of device neutrality, there's a provision which allows for app uninstalling. There's one related to side loading. There's a prohibition of restricting user switching. And then there's also another one mandating for access to operating system and other features. When it comes to data access and data portability, there's a request for business users data access, and then as well data portability. When it comes to platform neutrality, there's a ban on unfair conditions for app stores. And then, as I've said before, there's this general obligation to inform the Commission whenever big platform envisages to buy smaller business users. So in any case, all the compliance that needs to be assured by the big platforms must take into account matters such as security, privacy, and safety of the online apps, and also the integrity of the hardware or the operating system provided by the platform. So basically, we see here that we bring a lot of, how should I put it, benefits for the business users to have access to the data they've been generating, to make sure that they're being treated fairly in the App Store, and also to somehow be able and compete with any other products that the platform might promote itself. So in this regard, I think, the main focus of this regulation are digital gatekeepers. Of course, there might be indirect effects when it comes to the business users operating in their app stores, but as the regulation is being designed and as the objectives are being pursued, we're really looking to make sure that they are being able to innovate and grow as much as possible by benefiting of what we consider to be assets that at which they should have legitimate access, and also to be protected by unfair trading practices when it comes to bigger players that can abuse this. So this would be prima facie our approach to the regulation, and I'd be happy to further engage in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vlad. I think you touched upon quite many aspects that will be great to talk about. First of all, well, yes, the DMA built upon the P2B regulations, the platform to business regulation, that already put in place quite a lot of transparency measures and to improve the relationship between developers and stores, for example. So we're only starting to see the effect now. And also, you mentioned that most of these obligations are based on previous cases. So now it will be interesting to see how those remedies will be able to be applied to different businesses and what makes sense. So we'll come back on the different obligations such as side loading and so on with developers. I guess they have quite a lot to say about that. But maybe I'll turn to you, Cezara, because you looked at the proposal as well, and you identify some of the opportunities, challenges, of course, of what the proposal will bring to the online ecosystem. But I just want to hear a bit your views on what will be the main challenges, and in particular for small developers, what should we be concerned about, what we should watch out for?
So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here with you all and discuss these important issues. So as you mentioned, we at Europuls published a research, a policy brief after as a follow-up after 2 debates that we organized. Because we as a think tank want to open up the discussion between policymakers in Romania that represent us at EU level, but also to connect them with the tech industry, with representatives from the EU Commission, but also from the Romanian government. So we wanted to just to get the state of affairs of how DMA is perceived in the Romanian digital market. So I can say that we all know that it's a paradigm shift in how DMA wants to reframe the competition enforcement. We go now to an ex-ante regulatory obligations for targeted companies, gatekeepers, and there are some issues that need to be tackled here to ensure that all the actors in the digital ecosystem will have a level playing field, that they will be able to innovate to growth. So we know that this regulatory intervention is targeting big tech companies, so only the gatekeepers that control information flows. But at the same time, as you mentioned earlier, there might be some potential effects on the side of SMEs or startups. So in our research, we also envisaged the challenges, but also the opportunities. So I would say that we can already see that DMA is providing a framework for accelerated intervention from the authorities that will enforce these rules, but also increased transparency. They will have a better control on data and how companies could rely more on data to promote their company better. As Sveatoslav said, having data and using it is really important in growing your business and evolving. And also will make competition more available in the markets and will protect consumers better. But as we just identified some challenges that might be in the markets, we see that there is a potential for overregulation, and digital ecosystems are really dynamic markets, and we need to make sure that we have enough flexibility and adaptability for those rules that will make possible that will be able to change this if the conditions will be different in a short period of time. And also we need to make sure that the market is able to offer all the actors an important opportunity to make them more active. And I don't think that necessarily SMEs won't be able to innovate, because these rules are applying for big companies. So until that threshold that will make applicable those rules for gatekeepers, I think there is a lot of opportunity for startups and for other actors in the SMEs area to innovate. They are encouraged. That's the purpose of the regulation per se. And as the commissioners that were in charge with drafting this proposal, they said that this is exactly the scope of this regulation to improve the conditions for SMEs, that will make available more choices for the consumers, and that will be able to offer a framework where we don't have this imbalance between how big tech companies are controlling the market, and they have self-preferencing, and they also are able to promote their services better. So I think, especially now in Romania, when we have a growing market and many actors joining here, a lot of startups and accelerators for those startups, many initiatives and incentives for them to have to expand just in a short period of time. I think now the DMA is offering potential for helping them, but also we need to make sure that this environment will be safe and secure, and we will just need to have adaptability on a case-by-case basis if needed. And I think, yeah, that would be my point at this time, and I'm looking forward to your questions further on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I see that actually we have a question from the audience. It will be from Mike Sachs. I'll let him speak, and then I'm going to come back to what you said, because you mentioned the fact that well, this proposal targets online gatekeepers, and it will allow smaller businesses to grow, but at the same time we are in ecosystems, and therefore whatever we do to a gatekeeper's business could have a ripple effect. So before giving the floor to the app developers to reply, I'm just going to allow Mike Sachs to ask a question. Mike, the floor is yours.
Yes, I thank you for your commentary and your remarks. They were very insightful. Regarding what you talked about regarding over-regulation, I am wondering, because the DMA is such a big package of legislation, and the effects will be so long, for such a long time. Once it is in effect, it seems like it will be unstoppable. It will be so big, and it will be so hard to change. So this is kind of a crucial time where we can make sure that whatever we try to fix does not end up harming something else, especially the smaller companies. So what are the things that we can put in place that will help prevent that kind of problem, where we have, an unstoppable train that we can see is, by the time we see what the problems are, it'll be very hard to jump in and fix them, because these things take time. What can we do? What can we put in place to either see if there are problems earlier, or put enough flexibility in there so that if there are unintended consequences which there almost always are, we can actually do something about it.
I don't know who wants to take this question. Cezara, you were going to answer?
Yeah, I can try to give a short answer on that, and my colleagues can jump in. So I think at this point we should make sure that we have enough flexibility in DMA that will prevent those unintended consequences to be such a damage that we cannot repair in the end. So I think we need more clarity on how to make the classification for gatekeepers, because now here we can still make case-by-case investigations to decide which gatekeepers will be considered besides the threshold on quantitative aspects. But also I think we need to allow rules that may be adapted depending on the context in which they are applicable. I think having a regulation to all the EU countries is an important step, but also we need to make sure that every country has enough leeway to implement these kind of rules that will, because we are talking about different markets and different national rules on competition law. We see that in Germany with the specific intervention on competition law. So, but also with the level playing field and ensuring that there is equal access for digital players to compete and to innovate. Yeah, I think we should be mindful of the long-term effect and to put in place enough guarantees to make sure that we can adapt these rules if needed in the future. And the Commission said that they will evaluate the impact of DMA in the ecosystem in a few years after they implement it. So I think it's an important step that we still have sufficient safeguards, so to say. If we see that maybe that's not the approach we should have, that still we can adapt that. So I think that would be my take on it.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else wants to react. Otherwise, I can jump to the next question. That we're talking about those unintended consequences on the app ecosystem. I might turn to the app developers here. So we know that app ecosystem are interdependent. We the new laws is based on this assumption that it will not create any additional burdens on SMEs, because these are not gatekeepers and will not be targeted by the list of obligations set out in the text. However, anything to happen to the business model of a platform has an impact on the entire ecosystem, I would say. So my questions would be, what are those benefits that developers get from platforms? What is important, and what should we be careful about that we do not, I would say, remove those benefits and break something that's and fix something that's not broken. So to be able to talk about unintended consequences, we need to know what actually is working at the moment. So maybe Gabriel, I don't know if you want to have a go at that.
Sure. Yeah. I think like the current app ecosystem, especially like the app stores and what's behind them. I mean, the entire layers of like tech capabilities that make those things possible and create, I mean, a really interesting competitive space, because the barrier to entries are really low. You can get into that party that has trust, that has, I mean, has all those people you want to reach, has users, and has kind of the predictability of a system that is established, you know. And these are some of the core value elements for a new business to grow fundamentally, you know. So I think keeping those things would be important from my perception. You touched on the like interdependency of those systems. I think we have an element like that. I mean, the example that comes to mind was like the very recent OS update on Apple on the user tracking. Okay, that had an instant ripple in the entire ecosystem. We had clients that could not use their previous analytics tools before because they couldn't track anything. We had clients that needed to stop their user acquisition marketing campaigns because the prices for acquisition were just skyrocketing or were just zigzagging because all the other channels were instantly impacted by this. So I think any change in these like gatekeepers, as you call them in this legislation, can have such effects if they are not prepared right. Because I think like for us, this was an utter surprise that none of the players connected to this case were ready for this change. It seems like an utter surprise for everyone. It's just, you just can't do this anymore. I think because again, these players, these big players in the market provide an element of trust for the other side of the market, which are the users, because everybody is like targeting some users with their products in this. And the fact that you go to the App Store, to the Google Play Store, and you expect the things that are there to work, to be safe, to be, I mean, not to harm your hardware, not to harm your bank account instantly by something uncontrollable. I think there are huge things which are like not necessarily visible unless they disappear, unless they are affected negatively. So this is like where I see that we need to make sure we keep I would say the predictability of the current ecosystem.
These are indeed some strong points. I think the trust is one of the essential elements that enable the app economy to grow. And this is particularly important, for example, for you, Sveatoslav, because you work with kids. Actually, your app targets both adults and minors, and therefore having those safe and secure systems are extremely important. So I wanted to maybe have your view on what you see as the main benefits of service that platforms provide, and we need to make sure that we keep.
Yeah, like say Gabriel, the main point is like the Wello is working with the parents and the kids, and the parents already have the trust in the App Store and Google Store. And it's difficult to, if you want to try something of their kids, they will never install anything or any APK from the internet. And this App Store is giving a big trust about that the application was verified. And the biggest advance of our application, for example, it's already created a family application, a family category. And this family category is very stressed by verification from the Google and from the Apple, because everything needs to be more child friendly. Don't need to be hiding something special from the kids and so on. And that means the content that it's arrived to the kids and the parent, it's arrived with good content. And this is the main strong point of the App Store and Google Store. We will see what is happening also with the Huawei Store. We didn't try yet, but it's the next level. Yeah, I think this is a big. Also about the marketing, yeah, it's more easy to arrive to the customers, but also you need to have a strong marketing skills, also maybe strong budgets to make to arrive to features and so on. For example, our application for Untold that we developed, it's arrived like a best design of the week from Apple, and after we our account was more stronger and stronger reviewed. What I want to say that if exists good publisher and they can help you to publish application, it's more better for developers. It's more easy to arrive to the more downloads, more to arrive to the more business models and so on, because they also have experience and how to sell. But it's not 100% that it's your project. You are share the contribution. But if you have a good publisher, it's amazing. It's really amazing. Because we have before the game that it's have 3 million downloads, and the publisher Vivid Games helped a lot with this for promotion.
Yeah, so you mentioned visibility is actually one of the key aspects there. Maybe before turning back to Vlad, I just want to talk about some of the obligations in the DMA. For example, the text outlines a list of do's and don'ts, which platforms such as gatekeepers will have to comply. And these, for example, include ban of preferential treatment of platforms by their own services or their own app, but also, for example, impose a ban of sideloading of apps and not a ban, they enable sideloading the apps in the app stores. So I was just wondering, kind of those obligations, what would be your point of view? Because we mentioned the fact that all of these obligations, if they might be well intended, but if they reduce safety and trust, then they will reduce safety and trust in the app ecosystem, and therefore will not necessarily benefit the smallest one. So I just wanted to maybe see if Gabriel or Sveatoslav, you had something to mention on that, and then we can talk about the concrete solutions with Vlad.
Not much on my side, because I think like these, we need to understand the very practical implications of that. So if you're talking about like side loading, yeah, that might be an obligation that could make sense. The implication I see is that we need tools for that, and somebody need to build those tools in order for that thing to practically happen. And the question is, I mean, would somebody build such tools because a new need was like emerge in the market, or would somebody build those tools because they are forced by law to build those tools, you know? And if you build those tools, I mean, if the gatekeepers build those tools, would they control those tools? Because like every kind of tool comes with their own like controlling the implications from that side, you know? So this is what I understand now, but I'm still lacking a lot in order to practically understand the implications of that.
Yes, indeed. So that's again, that is something that's important, is that we need to understand concretely what are we talking about when we put in place those obligations, meaning that we need to analyze the impact these will have on the ecosystem. So maybe Vlad, I'll turn to you. So the DMA is designed precisely for that, to have rapid intervention, but that's the central point of this proposal, is that it's how to get the right balance between acting quickly but also thoroughly making sure we do not have those intended consequences. So where should the flexibility, should we be building more flexibility in designation criteria for gatekeepers, but also in this list of obligations to avoid precisely those unintended consequences for all the different players?
Okay, thank you very much. Also for my colleagues for their contribution. This is highly welcomed, and we're really glad to hear the Romanian app developers engaging with the DMA. In terms of your question, I mean, flexibility has always been at the forefront of the proposal. I mean, all the public narrative surrounding the DMA has seen flexibility as a double-sworded type of principle. First, there were rhetorics pointing out flexibility as, inheriting from competition law, that type of efficiencies, defenses that Article 101 and 102 have been equipped with. And then you have had other rhetorics saying that, the regulation is to benefit from more flexibility in terms of future proofness, and maybe more flexible catch up all situation type of norms should be imposed. So flexibility has been at the both ends of the policy design in this regard. You have had flexibility aiming at more enforcement, and you have had flexibility pointing out, allowing companies to bring more defenses in terms of their do's and don'ts, as you've defined them in Article 5 and 6. So here, I mean, it's an open debate, it's an open discussion. The flexibility we're looking at least from our perspective for the moment, is that in which we're looking at safety valves in terms of considerations such as the ones pointed out also by my panel colleagues. So as mentioned before, security, privacy, online safety, the integrity of hardware, or the operating systems. These are things that need to bring the guidelines to compliance. So whenever we have this type of maybe tension between market contestability and other policy objectives, we need to make sure that we're also taking into account other previous regulations that we've enacted. So data protection, consumer protection, cybersecurity, and so on. So I guess at least the mindset is to, make sure that whenever we're pursuing this new aim of market contestability as being defined of the DMA, we also take into account other policies that we have previously codified and enforced, and make sure that they go hand in hand. So in this regard, at least from our side, we see a great role here. Maybe I'm going a bit too technical for my colleagues, but at least I'm pointing out that, concrete facts. We see great merits for the regulatory dialogue. So we'd like the Commission to step in as early as possible and in as many situations as possible, and involve with the gatekeeper to actually guide the compliance exercise. And then we also see the need for more guidance. So that would be follow-up guidelines after the DMA is being enacted, as we have had good practice in the platform to business regulation when we've mandated the Commission to follow up with the specific guidance document in terms of ranking. So this would be, our preliminary approach to these matters, and we're very attentive to, have a fine-tuning in terms of mechanism design when it comes to the DMA. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll follow up with a question. So how do we make sure that we do this right? Because when we think about what the EU and other country, for that matter, has been making things better for, how do we make things better for small developers? When we think about, you talked about earlier on past competition cases. For example, in the Microsoft case, like the result, for example, was a version of Windows that had no browser, and no EU citizen even purchased, and yet for example, Microsoft no longer controls the browser market. So when I talk about this, these are just examples, just to show that it's not always easy to know what the future would look like, and when we mandate changes, it could have impact. So I'm thankful that you talk about regulatory dialogue. This is something also we've heard from for example, from the rapporteur on the file, Andreas Schwab, not so much in favor of that. But Cezara, you jump back on, so I don't know if you can still hear us, but I was going to ask Cezara, what will be your I don't know if can you hear us, Cezara?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Great. You're
I
back.
just got disconnected.
No problem. So I was going to say, so how can we make sure that we do this right? I mean, you have you started talking a bit about this, about how the DMA can be adjusted to promote innovation in Europe, to make sure that we promote the growth of small businesses. How can we make sure that we do avoid unintended consequences for smaller players?
So I think at this point we could start with an open dialogue and to start to listen more to what the industry has to say at this regard, because at the level of policymakers, it's not easy to understand of the technical implications that a piece of legislation will have in the market. So I think it's important to bridge this gap and to understand both the policy implications and also the impact in the market. So I think we can, it's a good moment now, because the discussion will be between the legislator, the parliament and the council, and there will be improvements to be made on DMA. And I think we can, as I support what Vlad said earlier, so there should be guidance afterwards on how DMA should be applied. But at this point, we can start more to understand if some concrete measures that we want to apply within DMA, if they will have far-reaching consequences in the market, we should tackle that carefully. So I think getting input from civil society and academia, and also all the stakeholders in the process, will have a meaningful impact on designing this regulation that will have the best approach that should be promoted in the market. So I think it's a mix of how to tackle this issue, but also to make sure that we promote the goals of the Europe's digital decade, to encourage innovation and growing businesses, also to make sure we can have more you know, like to be more careful with investments in these kinds of sectors, and to be able to take the best decisions.
Yes, thank you. I see that we have a question also for Vlad. So the DMA contains scrutiny to prevent anti-competitive acquisition, but getting investments in Romania or in the rest of Europe is still very difficult. So how can the DMA determine the difference between good and bad acquisitions in advance?
Thank you for the question. Here, in terms of legislative architecture, I'd say that the DMA doesn't point directly at that. The DMA has an Article 12, which requires all gatekeepers to notify to the Commission their envisaged acquisitions. It doesn't say whether or not it tackles any of these acquisitions. So basically, Article 12 is, let's say, more of a market inquiry type of instrument that would make the Commission and also member states better understand the logic and the incentives at play when it comes to big companies buying smaller ones. If after the analysis there's a firm let's put it, conclusion that this would be harmful for the markets, then of course member states and the Commission can pursue other legal instruments, namely the merger regulation and a refer, let's say, under Article 22, in order to make sure that this would never happen. But in terms of the mechanism design, these are safeguards that are being in place first to better understand the market, and then, if the case of a killer acquisition, competition authorities together with European Commission can figure out whether or not that would be harmful for the market. So it's in the hands of the enforcers at the end of the day to decide that. We just need to make sure that we have the right mechanisms in place and that we take informed decisions. And these informed decisions are based on data which is available to us. So I'd say Article 12 of the DMA is mostly meant at informing our thinking without prejudice to further market reactions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll maybe wrap it up with like a question to the developers about what is your vision at the moment on the business IT environment in Romania? How do you see the trends and evolution on the market? Sveatoslav, maybe you want to first react.
My personal opinion is positive about if you are building your personal projects, because also I think in the last 3 years we already have 3 or 4 VCs in Romania, and before this one we didn't have anything, only angel investors. That means that it's more and more interesting in the startups and also developers from Romania. I am sure that Gabriel can confirm, but also we have a good and biggest power about the outsourcing in Romania, because we are helping many companies and big companies, not just small companies, and huge projects. And it is a very advanced for us. But it's 2 sides. It's more difficult to find the good people to hire good employer now in Romania, because resources are so very big.
Yeah, I'm very much on the same page with Sveatoslav on this. I came back from Romania after a few years spent in London, and the evolution I've seen in the last like 5 to 6 years, I think is amazing from that perspective. So if you look at the startup space in like 2015, Romania was, I don't know, a few very small idea stage things with pretty much no money in the market, no active investors in the market, because there was, first of all, there was no culture to invest in this. Secondly, there were very few people prepared to invest in this type of risk, which are the startups. And the people who created those startups were at like the first experiment in the startup space. Now, in the meantime, the majority of those first experiments failed, and those people did it again and did it a lot better. So this is, I think, a tremendous jump from their perspective. And with events like Startup Weekend and other like similar events, all this like culture of risking things by creating products has developed a lot. Now, along with that, obviously came money for that. So right now we have, as Sveatoslav said, we have a lot of money in the market. If you build something interesting with potential, I think money is there for you to take. Up to close to Series A, we still are not there to the level of Series A in the Romanian market. I think you still need to go to London or to other places in Europe to get a proper Series A. But there is money to start this, and especially there is money to validate your concept, to validate your value with a new product. On the other side, we have a thriving ecosystem on the services side, on outsourcing or other types of services, which has like constantly grown for the last 20 years, and you have a few companies that like jumped from very small development companies to significant companies. Some of them were acquired. So you see this kind of, and you see the better impact that they have, and you see the impact these things have in society. So we're talking about a place like Cluj, where is very difficult to live for anyone else but developers, because the prices have risen in the meantime. The real estate is crazy because of this. So there are positive and mixed impacts, almost negative impacts from that perspective. And also, I think there is another element. There is a change in society that was like brought by these like emerging changes that impacted even politics. I mean, I think we're closer than ever to what's outside Romania and more connected than ever. And this is visible also in the way we approach things down here.
Thank you. Indeed, that's interesting to note. So we also, after this event, we're drafting a report on the state of the changes in Romania in this regard, and it echoes what you've been saying. It's nice to hear your views. Before we finish this event, because we're going close to the hour, I just want to see if anybody else on the panel wanted to react to what has been said or had final remarks. Gabriel, you on
Yeah, I can go for a final remark here, which is I still don't fully understand like the purpose of this act. Because for me, it's a very different thing to try to protect the market, like my understanding is about DMA right now, and a very different thing is to create strategic advantages for this market. And I'm not sure, I haven't seen the strategic advantages that this act would bring on the table, but maybe there is something I haven't fully I haven't fully got. Yeah.
My positive experience with the act, it was like we speak last year about the Apple Store and Google Store, and we speak about the discounts and so on. And this year it was implemented exactly the discount, but we speak it the last year, and some rules was applied that we discussed about with the act. That's why I have a very positive feedback with the action.
Yes, indeed. You're talking about the reduction of the fees with the small business program. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and we discussed exactly last year at the beginning about.
It's true. Yeah. We did. I don't know, Vlad or Cezara, you wanted to mention something before we finish?
Okay, I'll go ahead. So first of all, thank you again. I mean, this was really good input, duly noted. Second of all, I just want to, assure everybody that in Romania, especially also the capital, is taking this very serious. So we just had the competition authority mandated to enforce the platform to business regulation. So besides our big tech investigations, which were public in the market, and some also we're fining decisions, we are also putting another layer of regulation in terms of the platform to business regulation. And then we're also involved and hands-on delivering a clear mandate in Brussels in terms of the DMA. So I just want to make sure that people understand that we're carrying out work, and we keep our attention to the digital markets. And in, I don't know, maybe a couple of years time from now, we'll see app developers from Romania benefiting from the provisions of the DMA. So thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank you as well for opening up this discussion on DMA, and especially the impact on Romania. My last words would be that I have positive feelings of how the Romanian market will evolve and will grow. And we have a lot of potential here in Romania with the companies that choose to be based in Romania, that when they foreign investors that want to have here to invest. So I think that the startups and the SMEs will be able to scale up in the future and to compete with bigger players. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to reach out the best balance between the innovation and regulation to balance these interests, and also to achieve a level playing field where SMEs and startups can grow and they can compete with bigger competitors in the market. So I'm really hopeful that we'll reach out to a consensus in the next years. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that Sveatoslav mentioned the small business program where there was a reduction of fees for app developers, and which kind of shows that the market is constantly evolving and the different platforms compete with each other to get developers. And so this was a nice point, but thank you all of you for participating to this conversation. It was nice to hear your thoughts. I just want to say that we continue our tour. Where next stop is going to be in Germany. It's going to be on the 17th of June for those watching us, and we'll have the member of European Parliament, Andrew Schwab, who is actually rapporteur on the file. So this will be an interesting event to watch. So thank you again, and I wish you a pleasant afternoon, and I hope to speak soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.